Hi guys, welcome to another maths video. In this video we're going to go right back to the very bases that make up the subject of maths, and that is numbers. So first off, we'll start off with explaining as to what each type of number there is. So you've got your natural numbers, which are 1, 2, 3, etc. But then you can add a 0 to that as well, and that's where you start to sort that out. You then start things off, so you do 0, 1, 2, 3. And then with that, you can add positive and negative numbers into that. So then you can, which they appear on the left hand side of 0, which then would be -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, etc. And then you can go the other way as well. And also with that, in the form of, we've got what's known as rational numbers and irrational numbers. The rational numbers can be written as a fraction, like the following. So they're your rational numbers. They can be written as a fraction, whereas if I write down some that can't, like the following, we can these are the following at the bottom that can't be written as a fraction, including the all famous pi. Yeah, I think if I was to have that sort of pie, mine would be flavoured strawberry. But anyway, another irrational number, which is one that can't be written as a fraction, is this. And also another one is the following. Yeah, that looks like a fraction in itself. So it's what we're trying to get at here is 3 to the power of a half. Like that. Or 3 to the power of 1/4 is still an irrational number. The next thing I wanted to show you at this point is you've got other things as well that you can look at. So you've got factors where a number divides wholly into itself without leaving a remainder. So 4 is a factor of 12, so 4 divided by 12 is 3, which means then 3 would be a factor as well. And also, with that being said, you've then got the multiple, which is formed by multiplying a given number by another integer. So for example, 20 is a multiple of 2, 4, 5 and 10. A prime number can only be divisible by itself and 1. And a square number is a number that's multiplied by itself. So 2 squared or 4 squared being 16. So with that all being said, let's get some exercises done. And then you have the following. So from the set of numbers, which I've got here, 4, 17, 24, 41 and 49. First off, we're going to write down a multiple of 8. Let's go this side. So first off, we're going to write down a multiple of 8, which is 4. Because the multiples of 8 are 1, leaving out their prime ones. leaving out the prime factors, or the prime multiples, which are there'll be 2 and 4. And then the next one we are looking at is 2 square numbers. Now, remembering, as I said earlier, we have, so a square number that's a square number is a number that's multiplied by itself. So we have 2 squared, which is 4. And then we've got 49, which is 7 squared. The next thing we want to look at this point is a prime number. Now, a prime number, we've got 2 on the board, and I'll give you an extra mark if you can give me both, but this question only wants 1. But as I say, I will give you an extra mark if you've got them both, because there's 2 in this list. I'll write them down, remembering a square number can only, remember, a prime number can only be divisible by itself on 1. And then we've got there 4 is divisible by 2. 17 is a prime number. Just remembering what I said about 4 and 49. So remembering what I said about 4 and 49 being square numbers. So they can't be prime. And 24, the factors of that are 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, and 12. Which then leaves just this leaves the number between that, 41, and that, believe it or not, is your second prime number. The next one, we want a factor of 8. That's again going to be 4. So again, I mentioned again, because I mentioned that the multiples of a multiple of 8 is 4, and then you've got a 4 which you can then divide into 8 to give you 2. The next one is a rather interesting one, which is find a number which is the sum of 2 numbers in the set. Now, before I carry on with that, I've written something else as well. Addition is where you do your total or your sum. I always call it a total. So total or a sum is where you add up the numbers. And then you've got a subtraction where you find the differences. Multiplication is the product of the numbers. And then you've got, when you divide something, you're finding the quotient of that. So with that being said, we're now going to find the number, which is the sum. Whoops, bear me one moment. Bearing that in mind, we're now going to find the number, which is the sum or the total of the 2 that are already in the list. So then with that in mind, we've got 41, because 17 plus 24 is 41. And I'll put that in as well. And I'll put in what the sum is as well. And that's that whole first question done. The next thing we're going to look at, if I just wipe that off, we're now on to the second question, which is sequences. And then we have to work out, write down the next two numbers in each sequence. So in this case, let's start off with -3, 9, -27, -81, no, +81. Another thing that, whatever, I'll deal with that later. The next thing we need to take into account is the direction of numbers. So, and we'll look at more of that later on in the video. But there's one thing you need to know about in the rule of maths. Let's put that back up. And that is that any like sign gives you a plus, any unlike sign gives you a minus. So if you're trying to work out what I mean by that, this is what I mean. So we've got plus times a plus gives you a plus. Again, we'll look at more of this in the next video. But if you then have something like minus times a plus, you then get a minus. In the same way that if you've got a plus times a minus, that also gives you a minus. But then if you've got a minus times a minus, that gives you a plus. So what we've got there, that will then give us the idea as to help us what's coming up in the next sequence, what's coming up next in the sequence, and that is you're multiplying the number by -3. Remembering a plus times a minus gives you a minus. And then I'm just going to have to work this one out. Just quickly. Nine, 3. 27, 6 plus 2, and 21. And there you go. That's the first one. The second one, we are looking at the following. Now this one's a relatively easy one because all you're doing is you are subtracting 5 each time. So therefore your next two numbers are 9 and 4. The next one is an interesting one because, let's show that. We talked about square numbers where the numbers are multiplied by themselves. Nearly. Let's try that again. So we've talked about square numbers where each number is multiplied by itself. And then we've got cube numbers, which you then multiply them again. So it's a number that's multiplied by itself twice. So that's 1 cubed, 2 cubed is 8, 3 cubed is 27, 4 cubed is 64, 5 cubed is 125, and 6 cubed is 216. Now, the next one that follows that is another interesting one. Don't be fooled by it. So what we'll do is we'll write down the square numbers that are next in line. So then you've got 1, 4, 9, 16, and then you've got 25 and 36. However, what this is doing is it's adding 1 to it each time. So then what you've got from that, you need to add 1 to each square number. So 1 squared add 1 is 2. 2 squared is 4 plus 1 is 5. 3 squared is 9, add 1 is 10. 4 squared is 16, add 1 is 17. 5 squared is 25, add 1 is 26. And 6 squared is 36, add 1 is 37. Another interesting one we're going to look at as well is what's known as the Fibonacci sequence. So Fibonacci, what you're doing is you're taking a number like 1, and then you're adding the previous number to that, which is why then you've got 2 1s in the same sequence. So you've got 2 1s in the same sequence. So what you do then is you're adding to the same sequence. So you're adding the number to the previous number in the sequence. Like so. Then we've got 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. 2 plus 3 is 5. 3 plus 5 is 8. And then we've got to add in the next 2 ourselves. So then we've got then 8 plus 5 is 13. And then you do 13 plus 8, which is 21. And you can keep on going and going as much as you want with that. Let's move on to the next lot of sums, because this is where things start to get interesting. We are now looking for the first sum, finding the sum, so you're adding them up, of the first 4 odd numbers. But as you know, as I've written them down, the first four odd numbers are 1, 3, 5 and 7. And that gives you 16. Four, find the product of 100 times 6,013. Now this is where things start to get interesting. So this one is split into two parts. So 4A is we are looking at, so 6,013, it said. And then we are adding 2 noughts on the end of that because we're multiplying it by 100. And now it's asking you to write your answer to A in words. 600. Now I know that some people in the world don't concatenate with ands, but we do here in the UK. $601,300. Like so. 5. What's the remainder when 1,538 is divided by 39? This is going to be interesting. So what we do now is we're just going to... So 39 we need to remember. Just going to add them up. I also need to write down 1,538. That's 10, 20, 30, 40, but that's too much. So then what we do then, that would then be 39, remainder 22, or wherever it is. So 39 remainder, let's have a look, 1,560 is 22. And you need to take 38, 16. Yeah, so the answer to that would be 16. Because it's divisible 39 times with 16 left over. 6. Which number between 1 and 25 has the largest number of factors? Well, then I would say 24. Because 24, if we have a look at that, 24 has, apart from itself and 1, you've also got 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, and 12. B. Which number between 1 and 25 has the smallest number of factors? Well, you have to take into account that it's either going to be 1 because it's only 1, or a prime number, which we'll get to later on in the video. because they only have two factors, itself and 1. So I'd have to say 1 at this point because there's only one factor. I could be wrong. So what I'd do then, in which case if I am wrong, I'll put up a post and I'll correct myself where it's needed. The next question. What is the difference between, let me just wipe this off. What's the difference? So we're going to be subtracting here. Pen's in my pocket as well. Lucky I've got the lid on it. What's the difference between 5,022 and 8,205? And then it says write down your answer in words. But of course we need to subtract that first. So we've got 3, borrow 1 across. And then you've got, that is 8, 1, 3. And then with that in mind, you can then write down your answer in words. $3,000 183. So write that down. Eight. We're up to 8. And we then have write down the nearest integer to each of the following numbers. Now, interestingly enough, when you round something up, if it's less than 5, you round down to the nearest. If it's 5 or more, you round up. So with that being in mind, with that being said, we are looking at minus 3.75. And we're looking at the nearest, remembering we are looking at the nearest integer. So in this point, we look then at the first number in the decimal place. And then with that, that's more than 5. And therefore the answer would be 4. 5 1/3. Well, that equals to about 5.33. Let's put a -4 there. You can put the minus in any place you want to. We'll look at that in another video. And then you've got that. This is going to be fun. C, let me just put that back down to about 5, because that's less than 3, so you round it down. Square root of 17. Don't think I'm going to do that one yet, because I could well be wrong. Pi. Now, pi, as we know, is about 22/7. Pi, as we know, is 22/7. Or if you want the decimal, it's all the way there. And it continues on and on, it's a recurring number. But round it down, because we're looking at rounding it down to the nearest decimal, and then that becomes 3. And I'm certainly not going to be doing E either, because you've got 1.92 squared in brackets. Well, let's give it a go. It's not the same as doubling it, because that would give you 3.84. That's 18. The things I get up to for you guys. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that one either, because that's going to be too long. That's going to be way too long. And then also, moving on to the next question is, from the set of numbers I'm going to skip over number 9. 10. Is add 17 plus 33 and 12. So we do that one first, that's 50. And then we'll add that one afterwards, which is 62. And then after that, we then have the 7th prime number. Remember that prime numbers are only divisible by themselves and 1. We've got the first 5 up there already. We'll put them down here as well. The number 1 is not considered a prime number because it only has one factor. Here comes the next 2. Nothing now, no even numbers apart from 2 will be a prime number. So then we have 13. 15's not a prime number either because it's got 3 and 5. So then we follow on from that, which we mentioned in an earlier question, 17. The next one, subtract 583 from 1,000. I really should write down what the question numbers are. I'll do that in the next video. I already know what the answer to this is. So subtract 583 from 1,000. And then you've got that. And then you've got that 7. And 1. And 9 minus 5 is 4. And there's your answer. And then with that being said, we then go on to the next question, which is from the set of numbers. I'm going to skip over the sets. The attendance at a football match was 18,043. Write this number in figures. So it's 18,000 and 43. The next one, I did say I was going to skip the next anything that's in the list of. This one is another sequence. Write down the next two numbers in the sequence. This one is known as a triangular number where you add the following. So you do 1 plus 2 and then you just add 1 each time as you go down the triangle. So you've got 1 at the top, then you've got 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, which is where we got 2 in the set of numbers. So add 3, add 4, add 5, and then we're adding 6, and then we're adding 7. And then list in ascending order all the factors of 24. Well, I've just done that. I'll do it again. 24. 1, 2, so that's 12. 3, that gives you 8. 4, because that then gives you 6. 6, 8, 12, and 24. This time I did include the primals, which is just itself and 1. I'm going to skip the sets. I'm actually going to skip the list of numbers because some of them are irrational. I'd end up finding it difficult to work it out. But then what I will do at this point is I will go through that off screen and then I'll explain more to what that means. Another one that's interesting is what happens if you multiply by something ending in 0. So 1.05 times 10 is that. So that gives you 10.5. That looks rather confusing, so I'll just put it here as well. The second one, 1.05 divided by 10. So then you would then go back 1 and then put in a naught there. And I'll put in the following as well. So then you know exactly what I mean. Next one. 0.03003 times 10. Well, that's quite easy enough. You just get rid of one of the zeros. So it then becomes 0.03. D. 0.12 divided by 20. Now what we do at this point is we knock it back 1. So then in this case we add a 0. and then we times that by 10, we times it by 2, which then gives you the following. I think. Because it's divided by 20. Let me double check that. This is where my calculator comes in handy. And it doesn't say you can't use a calculator for this. Three over 5,000. And that is 0.024. Which is interesting. And then, let me double check that. I need to double check that. Because that might be 0.036. What we do then. 3 over 500. Which then I want to convert that in another way. Try this one then. It's handy to have more than one calculator. .0006. Of course it is, because you then have to halve it again. Apologies for that, guys. .006. My apologies. The next one is 67.03 times 1,000. 1, 2. You go 1, 2, and 3. Again, I think I ought to double check that as well. Yeah, that's fine. And then we've got 4. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. 0.356. Which is 0, because anything divided by 0 is 0. 45 times 45.7 times 100 would be 4,570, because then you do get rid of the decimal point for tens, 457, and then add another 0. H, on the other hand, 45.7 divided by 0. You can't actually divide anything by 0, you get an infinite error. and then 0.6 times 200. 0.6 times 200. That's 10, that's 10, 100, 200. So you're working out 60% of 200, essentially. But that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I do apologise for any mistakes I might have made during this time. But don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.